Hello and welcome to Straight Talk. Images of malnourished stock are unwelcome at any time, but this week many rural and urban evening meals would have been disrupted by pictures of dying and dead calves on a central North Island property. So who's to blame? The farmer who maintains he should have been alerted to the problem earlier, MAF who didn't arrive at the property for several days, or Fonterra which has been called on to impose higher animal welfare conditions. On a more positive note, the giant cooperative's finalised result for the past year offered just 1 cent over the predicted $5.20 a kilogram of milk solids, and that was promptly retained. But debt levels which have caused worries do seem to have been reduced. Today I'm joined by Bernard Hickey from www.interest.co.nz and economic commentator Rod Oram. Welcome. Now Bernard, this is a terrible look for the dairy industry.
That's right, and Crayfer farms have been prosecuted before for animal neglect and also for environmental lapses. And the images we all saw on Monday night, and which we have put on our website, which we obtained, show calves dehydrating to death. Extremely poor management. Unfortunately, many people have warned about the Crayfers before, and this is a case of where Fonterra, MAF and the banks who lent the Crayfers $200 million have not acted quickly enough to essentially shut down or sell out or change the management of a farming group which threatens to damage New Zealand's 100% pure reputation in the eyes of the world.
So they all bear some responsibility, all those groups?
I think so. I spoke with Alan Crayfer for 45 minutes on Monday before we did this story. He is a man under incredible stress. He has grown that operation from essentially a family farm to a $200 million business, but without any of the controls, any of the what you'd call HR backing or corporate structures or governance structures to make that work. He's essentially got 30,000 cows, 200 workers, 22 farms, and he's trying to manage it in his head. He's trying to do it from the back of a wall calendar.
So he's been terribly under-resourced for what he's trying to do?
He's chosen to be under-resourced. He could have structured his operation a bit more like some of the really big corporate farms in New Zealand, but he's chosen to run it like a family farm. That's fine when you've got one farm and 200 cows. Try doing that with 30,000 stock, 200 staff, spread over the whole of the North Island. He told me he'd been driving for 37 hours going between farms. Alan Crayfer needs a lot of help to manage his way out of this problem. The banks need to help him. They need to put in, frankly, I think, receivers. Fonterra need to help him. They need to put in experienced managers. And MAF really need to do their job, which they have not done with the Crayfers.
But the Crayfer family haven't really been out of the news recently, have they, Rod? Is it a case of hitting someone when they're down?
No, it's a very important case, and as each element comes to the front and we understand what's going on there, it's really important to keep up with the story because the issues are so important for New Zealand. I'm just astonished that the banks have lent so much money without apparently any check on what sort of business structure the Crayfer family have had, because there's none. And I just find it extraordinary the banks would have lent that much money on such a flimsy structure.
But now we're actually in a sales process situation. Isn't it a case of due process just taking place, calling in the receivers at this stage of things? It's a bit late, isn't it?
Oh no, the earlier you get in with the receivers before things turn pear-shaped. Remember, they're right in the middle of spring. They've got 20,000 cows calving. It is chaos, frankly, within the Crayfer Farms group right now. There is a real risk to the security that the banks have over the stock and the land, because every new prosecution for allowing effluent to go into lakes or rivers, every new instance of this sort of animal neglect is damaging for the farm's value. And I actually think the farms would be worth a lot more, and the stock will be worth a lot more with different managers. The banks need to act now, and the government need to pressure them to do that, and to pressure Fonterra to help provide, because an awful lot of cows, an awful lot of workers and managers need to be put into those farms.
So what could Fonterra do immediately? Take some of the stock and put them on neighbouring properties, or?
Well, put people in to manage those farms and to get neighbours, whoever, to help out. This is a crisis for the New Zealand dairy industry. This is New Zealand's largest family-owned farming group, one of the largest suppliers to Fonterra. All that needs to happen is for this video to be shown on the BBC or ITV or CBS to permanently damage New Zealand's reputation as a source of clean, healthy food. Now, this is our reputation here. We've spent tens of millions of dollars on the 100% Pure campaign alone. Fonterra spends hundreds of $millions advertising our reputation. Yet MAF, for example, only have 5 inspectors covering 10,000 farms, and horribly under-resourced. Fonterra don't seem very aggressive on this. For example, my understanding, they have never stopped collecting milk from a farm because of environmental or animal neglect.
I know that the Fonterra argument there are legal issues in terms of the situation of their shareholder not having that service provided, which is something that when they sign up as a shareholder is understood will happen. But do you think it's time to really just say, no, the tanker is not calling?
At the annual results briefing last week, Andrew Ferrier said that 11% of farms are not meeting Fonterra's environmental standards. So if there is a contractual issue there, that needs to be put right, where Fonterra says, you know, if you are in breach of those environmental regulations, then we're not taking the milk. And in this case, if I was a banker, I'd be starting to get really worried that such as the deterioration in the performance of the Crayford farms, you could imagine at some point, possibly quite soon, that the milk gets to a point that Fonterra won't take it, in which case if there isn't cash flow, it's an even bigger problem, plus an increasing environmental and animal welfare problem as well. But I think it's the banks that would actually need to put in the management now. I think that's a very difficult decision for Fonterra to make, because they've always been very cautious about trying to reach in over the farm gate, and I think in this case this would probably be a move too far for them.
This is where I think the government needs to intervene, to corral together the banks, Fonterra and MAF, to work together to fix this problem. Rod is right that it's not Fonterra who can jump in and manage these companies, but the banks have control over the Crayfords. They have forced the Crayfords to put their operation up for sale. Alan Crayford told me on Monday that he's being allowed by the banks to manage the sale process. That should not be allowed.
Everyone seems to be rather reluctant to do anything until MAF make a decision about whether they're going to prosecute. That's become irrelevant now, hasn't it?
I think so. MAF actually told Alan Crayford on the day, September the 7th, when they arrived at that property near Bennydale to shoot calves, that he would not be prosecuted. Blind eyes have been turned to Crayford for many, many years. There's only been one prosecution. He was fined $200. And MAF's performance in this has been woeful. For example, they still haven't managed to get back to me with the details of how many times I've investigated Crayford. It's been nearly 4 weeks since we've been investigating this story.
Now, turning to Fonterra's result, Rod, what do you make of the reduced debt levels? Will they satisfy farmers who had been concerned about that?
Oh, it was useful to reduce that debt level, but it's really important to remember that the largest part of that reduction came from the very big drop in inventories. So in terms of the underlying sort of financial strength of the co-op, that hasn't changed a great deal. So farmers, and indeed the company, needs to remain very focused on trying to strengthen that financial position.
What are you hearing amongst farmers about their attitude towards capital restructuring, Rod? Are they basically in favour of it?